When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
This content may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion advised.
As I was walking to work one day, the Easter man saw me from his car and followed me to the restaurant.
He started telling me I could get any guy I wanted, then said that God wanted me to be pregnant and that it was time for me to be.
And looking at her injuries more closely, we saw movement. That's when I noticed there were bugs in her skin.
From Killer Podcasts, true tales of horror, bizarre happenings, unexplainable events. This is Disturbed. Hello and welcome back to the show. This week we're bringing you 5 stories that will have you wanting to crawl out of your skin. So sit back, listen closely, and dive into the horror. First, a story narrated by Terra Ashe from Reddit user Peachy Pink. Annual visit from the Easter Man.
This story began 3 years ago when I was 15. I work as a waitress in a 5-star Michelin restaurant in a sweet little area. We usually don't get anyone with bad intentions, usually just snobs. Easter Sunday of 2022, one of the busiest days of the year, a man came looking for a table for one. He was in a 3-piece suit, holding a carton of chicken eggs. He was put in my section, so I went over to get his drink and food order. After I got his order, he kept talking to me, asking about my education, what I was doing in school, what my plans were for the future, what my hobbies were, etc. It was just a little too far beyond polite, but I let it slide. I was busy, tired, and didn't want any trouble. Eventually, he left for the day, and I thought that was that. Oh, was I wrong. For the next couple of months, he came in 2 to 3 days every week. He got more confident, attempting to flirt with me and even asking me to go out with him after work. During one shift, I was walking him to his table and he slid his hands down my back and over my butt. I turned around and politely told him not to touch me and not to push my boundaries. I was only 15 and he knew that. I didn't serve him that day. A week later, he came in and I refused to serve him once again, so my manager took over his table. Later, when everyone else was on break and it was just me on the floor, he came back inside. He came up behind me, sliding his hands down my arms. I was shaken up, but again, politely told him not to touch me. I didn't see him again until next Easter in 2023. That day, things got worse. He showed up again with his usual shenanigans, but my managers were prepped this year. They didn't allow him within my vicinity and kept me safe, but this was only useful while I was at work. I have to walk through the town center to get to work, and it's about a 25-minute walk from the train station. As I was walking to work one day, the Easter man saw me from his car and followed me to the restaurant. I immediately told my managers, who told me to stay away from him. A week later, I was having coffee before work, about a 15-minute walk away from my job, and guess who sees me and follows me on foot to work? I again told my managers, who kept me away from him again, yet that day was different. He asked my managers for me, saying he knew I was there because he'd seen me. Last year, I took a lot of time off from work around Easter time to study for exams. Apparently, he came in a few times asking for me. Since I was nowhere to be seen, he gave up and hasn't come in since. This past Easter Sunday, however, I wasn't taking any chances. I didn't work that day as I had no desire to run into the Easter man.
Our next story is told by Cesar Brasil about an unsettling apparition.
I'm from Sri Lanka. I'm 26 years old, and I'm a Buddhist. This story takes place when I was in high school, and it's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me. At the time, I shared a bed with my younger brother, who was around 12 years old. Our room faced a main highway, so there were often sounds of traffic. The bed was shoved into a corner, and there was only a 2-foot gap between the foot of the bed and a wardrobe pressed tight against the wall. On the other side of the room was the door with an old iron table sitting by it. The table had one short leg which would wobble and make a loud sound if you bumped it. One night, my brother and I climbed into bed around 9:30 or 10 p.m. The hot, sticky weather made me restless and I couldn't sleep. My brother, however, seemed to nod off quickly. Through the curtain on our door, I could see the living room light still glowing. After about 30 minutes, my parents and sisters turned off the lights and went to bed too. I shut my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. The heat and the sweat were brutal. I tried my best to doze off with no luck. 2 or 3 hours dragged by and I was still awake. By then, the road outside was completely quiet, not a single car passing. Then, out of the blue, I heard it. Footsteps inside the house. Shoes on the tiled floor, walking slowly but steadily from the living room toward our room. They were calm, not hurried, but they were getting louder and closer. The sound stopped right at our door. I kept my eyes squeezed shut, too terrified to look, and pulled the sheet over my head as if that would protect me. For a moment, it was dead silent. Then all of a sudden, the table in our room thudded like something bumped it. Now, I knew someone was there. Forget the heat, I was sweating from pure fear, shaking under the sheet. I wanted to peek out, but I was petrified. Finally, I couldn't stand it. Pretending to still be asleep, I slid the sheet down and cracked my eyes open just a sliver. I couldn't believe it. A man was sitting on the table. He looked like he was dressed for a job interview. A sharp, long-sleeved shirt tucked into pants, His hair was rather long, brushing his shoulders. With my eyes half open, I couldn't make out his face clearly. But there he was. One leg up on a chair, the other on the floor, hand on his hip, staring at our bed. I wanted to yell, but my voice was gone. I tried over and over, but nothing came out. I couldn't even turn to my brother. My body felt like a rock. Panicking, I shut my eyes again and yanked the sheet back over my head. I was trembling now, scared out of my mind. Minutes passed, and I didn't hear a sound. My brother shifted in his sleep next to me, but that was it. I had to check again. Still pretending to be out cold, I eased the sheet down and peeked at the table. He was gone. I felt a flicker of relief, but then thought, where did he go? I lowered the sheet more and glanced at the wardrobe by our feet. There he was, standing right at the edge of the bed, looking down at us. He was tall, perfectly matching the 6-foot wardrobe's height. I was drenched with sweat, but I felt ice cold, frozen in place. My brother kept tossing and turning, clueless. I couldn't even nudge him. My arm wouldn't move. Desperate, I squeezed my eyes shut again, thinking whatever happens, let it be. After a while, I forced myself to look again. I tilted my head down, cracked my eyes, and checked the foot of the bed. He wasn't there. I glanced at the table, empty. The room was silent. My heart lightened a bit. Whoever he was, he's gone, I thought. Feeling safer, I adjusted my pillow and looked up. That's when I saw something I'll never forget, ever. Typing this now, my hands are shaking, my ears feel frozen. Our bed was right against the wall, with maybe an inch of space behind it. Nobody could fit there. But when I looked up, there he was, perched on the headboard, leaning over me, his face so close to mine that there couldn't have been more than a foot between us. That's all I remember. I think I blacked out. Next thing I knew, it was morning. My brother wasn't beside me. Still in bed, I tried to figure it out. What happened last night? Was it a dream or real? I was dead sure it was real, but I tried telling myself it was a nightmare to calm myself down. My head throbbed and I felt feverish. Groggily, I stumbled out of bed and into the living room. It was empty, but I heard my mom and brother chatting in the kitchen. I went to tell my mom what I'd seen, still half convincing myself it was fake. But before I even had the chance, I heard my brother say something that turned my shaky fever into full-blown chills. My brother was telling my mom, "Mama, last night some guy came into our room. He was by the table first. Then he went over to Aya's side and leaned right over his face. I shut my eyes. I was terrified. When I looked again, he was by the wardrobe. I turned away, too scared to scream, though I tried. Later, I peeked, and he was on the bed, leaning over Aya's face, staring at him. I clamped my eyes shut and must have passed out." For a whole month after, we played Buddhist Pirith chants in our room non-stop. Nothing weird happened again. But get this. Before that night, my older sister had told us something too. She said one afternoon while napping, someone grabbed her hair and pulled her off the bed. At the time, we laughed, thinking she was joking. But now we weren't so sure. Some might believe my story is true. Others might say it's nonsense. Up to you. But I've still got questions that haunt me. What was that? How did he lean over me like that without falling? How could anyone fit in that tiny space behind the bed? For a long time after, I was terrified to sleep. Every time I climbed into bed, I'd lie there with my heart racing, scared I'd see that man again, staring down at me in the dark.
You're listening to Disturbed. We'll be right back. I'm not a big shopper. I feel mostly comfortable at home. No lights on, peeking through the blinds at my happily married neighbors who are just so annoying. So, when I find a place I can shop that just gets it, like Quince, it's game over. I'm telling everyone I know about Quince so they can get in on the action, except the Jeffersons. All they're getting is what's coming to them. I ordered a few things for the summer months, and suddenly I've got outfits that just work. No stress, no overthinking, no pacing back and forth for hours, hyper-focusing on the littlest details. Quince has all the things you actually want to wear. The best part? Everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. Elevate your closet with Quince. Go to quince.com/disturbed for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/disturbed to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/disturbed.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing, it's precision crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes on go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Welcome back to the podcast. This next story comes from Reddit user Smalley_Bells1 and is narrated by Hannah Robertson, waiting alone at the train station.
One night, nearly a year ago, I was waiting alone at an empty outdoor train station. The ambiance was eerie and I was a bit cold, but I didn't feel unsafe, at least initially. I had a full view of both sides and could see from a good distance if anyone was approaching. and I was hoping no one would. To my unease, I spotted 2 men walking to the train station, and I couldn't help but wonder if they were there to take the train or to do something harmful. As they got closer, I became more stressed. The younger man received a phone call and answered it cheerfully in a language I didn't understand. He walked right past me, greeting me with a friendly nod, and sat on the ground pretty far from me. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking the second man was going to follow him. But instead, he stopped right in front of me and looked me up and down. I asked in my language if there was a problem, unsure if he would understand me. He did, and answered in my language that there was no problem. He said I was beautiful and asked why I was so sad. Although annoying, he just seemed like someone's dad who was unaware he was making a girl uncomfortable. I tried to nod along to his conversation until the train arrived, at which point he asked if he could sit next to me on the train. I should have said no, but I just shrugged uncomfortably. I boarded the train and tried to get away from both men quickly, but sure enough, the older man sat beside me, and the younger one in front of me. It's okay, I think. I just have to get to my destination. The older man tried to make eye contact with me, but I looked away. He kept telling me I was beautiful and asking questions about my life, most of which I didn't answer truthfully. But then things started getting weird. He started telling me I could get any guy I wanted, then said that God wanted me to be pregnant and that it was time for me to be. He repeated over and over that I was truly beautiful. He even tried to put his arm around me. Then he asked me if I wanted to go to a nearby village with him. I said no, but he kept insisting, saying I had to be free and happy. I kept saying no. He then changed the subject and asked me why I was so sad. I said I wasn't, but he said, "Yes, you are." I repeated that I wasn't, and this went back and forth until he said he knew I was sad because he was a medium. He knew I just needed to be free and get a man, and that if I went with him, he could help. I told him no, and that my dad was waiting for me. He asked, "Is your dad strong?" To which I replied, "Very." He backed off a bit after this, and I texted my friend to explain the situation. He asked who I was texting, and I asked why he wanted to know. He said I should give him my socials in case I needed his advice. I told him no, that I didn't feel comfortable with that, and he insisted that I give him my number because he was really good at helping women. It was right then that my friend called me. Salvation. We talked on the phone until I got off the train. I walked to the parking lot and didn't see either of the guys. Maybe they hadn't got off the train. I was looking for a place to hide and call my dad, and I was fumbling in my purse for my phone. I felt someone hug me from behind. It was the same older guy from the train, this time alone. I pushed him off me and clenched my fist, ready to punch him. He said he just wanted to say goodbye, and with his weird tone, he started getting closer to me, pursing his lips. Again, I pushed him off and ran away to call my dad. I broke down into tears as soon as I was safe. I truly think that man could have done something horrible to me that day. Please, let's not meet again.
Our next story is about a childhood close call, narrated by Bodhi Crowe.
When I was around 4 years old, my family lived in a shady neighborhood. But of course, at my young age, I wasn't aware of this. My parents loved my brother and me, so they always kept a keen eye on us and made sure that we always felt safe. One sunny spring day, I was playing outside with my 7-year-old brother while our mom watched us. She had just put training wheels on my new bike, so I could keep up with my big brother. My brother and I were having fun riding up and down the sidewalk without a care in the world. We passed a big truck with tinted windows, its red paint scratched and dull. As my brother and I sped up ahead of my mom, I glanced back to make sure she was still there. That's when I noticed the red truck had moved from its parking spot and was slowly creeping down the street. It wasn't long before my brother and I realized that this truck was either close behind us or right next to us. My mom yelled for us to come back to her as she ran toward us, ready to defend us. My mom has always been a scary woman when she needs to be. She's strong and has a tough build. She shot the truck a dirty glare as she pulled me and my brother close. The truck immediately took off, and she pulled out her phone and took a picture of the license plate. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in our small living room at night, watching a movie with my mom and my brother before bed. My dad worked the night shift, so he wouldn't be home till around 2 a.m. We'd been hearing sirens blaring in the distance for almost 15 minutes, when suddenly an even more alarming sound caught our attention. Someone was at our back door, and they were trying to get in. My mom rushed to the door and held it shut. Sometimes the lock was faulty, so she needed to be sure he wasn't getting in. He gave up on the door and moved to the kitchen window, hitting it repeatedly. Then, he grabbed a rock from the garden to try to break the window. My brother and I ran and hid under the bed in our parents' room, the only room in the house with a lock on the door. In a matter of minutes, the sirens got louder. The police cars were on our street. Then, we heard shouting coming from our backyard. Eventually, the commotion died down. The sirens were gone, and the three of us were left shaken by the experience. It turns out that the man who'd followed us in his red truck 2 weeks prior was a fugitive from the police. That night, he was attempting to break into our house to hide from authorities. He had already tried breaking into 2 other houses nearby. This man was a pedophile and a trafficker who would have made me and my brother his next victims if my mom hadn't come to the rescue. I'm extremely grateful that my mother was there, and that she's the mom she is. Otherwise, I wouldn't be telling this short story today.
Our final story is narrated by Jhas Williams from r/Creepy Encounters, a horrifying EMT call.
I'm currently an EMT, but at the time of my story, I was still a student doing ambulance ride-outs with the local fire department. As students, we had to reach a minimum requirement of hours accompanying the fire department on calls and learning from them. So on my official last day of ride-outs, I chose a Friday night shift, 3 to 11 p.m. I live in a rather busy, smaller city in Texas. Most of our calls at this station occurred later in the night, so it was common for us to sit around waiting for nighttime. I was taking notes for class when we got dispatched to an unknown status female under a bridge. This isn't unusual. I mean, we do have a pretty large homeless population, and callers will see them on the road and think something's wrong. Now, often they're just drunk, but sometimes they've OD'd and they need Narcan. I was really excited, not because someone was hurt, obviously, but because of the adrenaline rush. We arrived at the scene to find a collection of tents intricately connected to each other under a main highway road. And as we approached, the EMT, medic, and I soon spotted our patient in a wet ditch not far from the residence. She was sitting cross-legged with her back to us, so we couldn't see what she was doing, but she looked very busy. There was a terrible smell, but I just chalked it up to the poor living conditions. We tried to get her to speak to us, but she cussed at us and shooed us away without even turning around. Walking up to her, we finally realized what she was doing. At first glance, I noticed her legs and feet. Her ankles and feet were discolored in unnatural shades of purple, yellow, and green. The raw, red flesh near her toes was inflamed and slowly bleeding. I was so distracted by her feet that I didn't recognize what she was holding at first. The medic was talking to her, trying to comprehend what the hell was happening. She was cutting off her toes with a pair of kitchen scissors. Her feet had necrotized, and she was brutally hacking away at her flesh and toes with the bluntest pair of scissors I had ever seen. On her left foot, her rotted flesh had toe bones sticking out. She had completely degloved her toes, and we were unable to find them at the scene. On her right foot, she had succeeded in fully amputating the toe bones, leaving a grossly rotted stump of necrotic flesh. And again, we were not able to find the remnants. Somehow, despite the gruesome injury, she wasn't in any pain, probably because the flesh had necrotized. She was arguing with the paramedic, insisting that she didn't need to go to the hospital, so it took about 30 minutes to even convince her to come inside the ambulance. The smell was so overwhelming that the medic had to briefly step out of the ambulance to throw up. Unfortunately, the medic and I were the unlucky ones who had to sit in the back with her while the EMT drove. I'm still not sure how I managed to make it without getting sick, because the stench was absolutely insane. I do have a background in mortuary transport, so maybe that helped me to prepare. With her on the stretcher, in better lighting, we were able to see fully the damage she'd done to her feet. And looking at her injuries more closely, we saw movement. That's when I noticed there were bugs in her skin. The entire time she was arguing that she wouldn't need an amputation, that cutting her toes off and wrapping bandages around them got rid of the gangrene. We didn't want to make her any angrier than she already was, so we didn't take any vitals or ask too many questions. Upon arrival at the hospital, an emergency room doctor I'd seen a few times during clinicals took over. The patient was screaming directly into the doctor's face about the removal of her own toes. And let me tell you, we sprayed everything and wiped literally every surface of the ambulance with disinfectant. Then we got food from Zaxby's, and it's crazy to say, but the bones in the chicken wings reminded me of the tiny bones sticking out of that woman's feet. Turns out, the fire department had gotten a call about the same patient the day prior. She'd consumed an entire handle of Tito's and was screaming racist profanities and slurs at one of the responding EMTs. She'd also had a bunch of Nazi tattoos. This call was unlike anything I had ever seen before, and I was extremely unnerved by it. Sometimes, images of her feet still randomly pop into my mind.
Want more Disturbed? Check out our Patreon for member-exclusive content, early merch access, and other cool perks. I'm your host, Doug Bailey, and this has been Disturbed, a production of Killer Podcasts and part of the Evergreen Network. For more paranormal and true crime shows, visit killerpodcasts.com. Follow our social channels at Disturbed Podcast on Instagram or Disturbed_pod on Twitter. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and reviewing on your favorite listening platform. Share your own true horror story at disturbedpodcast.com. Music by Epidemic Sound and by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Our producer is Noah Fouts. Our audio engineers are Nathan Corson and Will Pritz. Executive producer Bridget Coyne. Until next time, stay safe out there.
It's Madeline Barron from In the Dark. I've spent the past 4 years investigating a crime.
Believe it or not, sooner or later we will kill some of these folks who need to be killed.
A crime that for almost 20 years has gone unpunished.
I heard M16.
They went into the room and they were just taking shots.
Me and Noor, we were under the bed. He get his rifle under the bed and start shooting at us.
I remember I opened a Humvee and I just see bodies stacked up.
How did they not perceive that these were children?
A 4-year investigation, hundreds of interviews, thousands of documents, all in an effort to see what the U.S. military has kept from the public for years.
You know, I don't know what's to be gained by this investigative journalism.
Season 3 of In the Dark is available now, wherever you get your podcasts.